Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Jhilam Chattaraj, Assistant Professor, Department of English, RBVRR Women's College. Today our module is on Globalization and Glocalization. It is in the paper Cultural Studies. We shall begin by introducing the concepts of globalization and glocalization. Next, we shall move on to socio-cultural aspects of globalization. We shall begin by explaining the different concepts related to globalization and glocalization. Next, we shall take up the socio-cultural aspects of globalization. We will explain the concepts of cultural globalization, liberalization, deterritorialization, and digital globalization. Glocalization in the field of cultural studies will also study effects of globalization and glocalization and threats of westernization and cultural homogenization. Let us begin by understanding the term globalization. Globalization signifies a free movement of capital, culture, human resources, socio-political ideas, industries throughout the world. It has also bridged the cultural boundaries between nations, leading to porous national borders. And thus, it has resulted in the formation of multiple diaspora communities across nations. According to Jean R. Schulte, globalization in general implies an economic phenomenon that has occurred in the later half of the 20th century. It implies a free movement of capital, industries, people, properties, culture, and ideas. It has resulted into the following concepts such as internalization, liberalization, universalization, westernization, and deterritorialization. If you see in the following, you may notice in the present graphic the different realities resulted by globalization. You can see on the left hand accountability, terrorism, a world that is shrinking, technology, free trade, culture, capitalism, monopoly power, environment, and on the right, integration of economies, equality, inequality, communication, recognition, trade versus aid, outsourcing, brands, exploitation, growth, and poverty. Globalization has many aspects. One of the most important aspects of globalization is culture. We call it cultural globalization. Let us understand what we mean by cultural globalization. Globalization is the distribution of the cultural property and thus initiating a popularization of local cultural properties. It has resulted into the spread of cultural attitudes like democracy and human efficiency across the globe. Cultural globalization refers to the global consumption of cultural items. It is a process of cultural diffusion. The role of international travel and popular media like television, telecommunication, and internet is primary in the spread of cultural globalization. Developing nations have shared norms and knowledge discourses. This has contributed in the global reach of American companies and especially fast food chains like McDonald's and Starbucks and Kentucky Fried Chicken. Cultural globalization has resulted into the shared norms and knowledge and discourses in among different nations. Thus, American companies like McDonald's, Starbucks, and KFC have been able to reach into the farthest corners of the globe. This shows the proliferation of native cuisines in global markets. Cultural globalization thus refers to the spread of local cultures across different parts of the globe. To give you a simple example, the culture of yoga. Yoga is something that is indigenous to India. But now you can see the entire world celebrates World Yoga Day. People in Times Square, in Moscow, in Turkey, in Japan, everywhere in the world, they gather one day to celebrate World Yoga Day as well as people individually in their own houses also practice yoga. So we can see how the culture, the local culture of yoga has spread across the globe. We shall now move on to the next concept, the concept of diaspora and global citizenship. Diaspora and global citizenship refers to the becoming of a global citizen. It refers to the rootlessness of an individual and the formation of diaspora communities in a foreign land. Of course, this results into the process of deterritorialization and reterritorialization. Deterritorialization refers to your being uprooted from one country to another country, and once when you move to a new country and you settle down there for some time, you make that country your own home. What do? You reterritorialize yourself. Diaspora also refers to the production of cultural hybridity. That means once you move from one country to the other, you don't completely forget your own culture, isn't it? You go to a new nation and you try to establish a mixed kind of culture, which forms a cultural hybridity. Right? So you might say you are an Indian and you live in US, but you want to continue to remember your homeland. So when you go to US, you start a dance academy where you teach Bollywood dancing. But after some time, you realize that to popularize Bollywood dancing, you must mix it with some Western form of dancing, which is familiar to the people of US. So you might take a little bit of salsa and you might mix salsa and Bollywood dancing and come up with a hybrid dancing form. This is referred to cultural hybridity. Hybridity is a cultural outcome of globalization. It is a specular border of the intellectual. Hybridity signifies multiple identities and multiple locational belongings. Hybridity gives birth to multicultural citizenship and the rise of multiculturalism and transnationalism. We shall now understand the concept of digital globalization. Digital globalization has impacted the digital revolution caused by globalization. It has resulted into the shift from a tangible flow of physical goods to an intangible flow of information, of data worldwide. Besides developed countries, many other economies, emerging economies and developing nations have participated in the digital globalization. Technology has played a major role in the evolution of digital globalization. People might be poor in India, in Brazil, in the Barbados, in China, but you might see that they might all use the same phone. So you have access to same technology, internet, but your economic status may vary. So this is what globalizes us. Digital culture, technology has united us even though we are living in different parts of the world. We shall now move on to the concept of globalization and its evolution. Globalization have evolved due to intensive knowledge flows. It has grown due to the importance of digital infrastructure in transportation of cultural products. It has also come into being due to the participation of small companies and individuals besides multinational giants. Globalization has come into being due to cultural transportation of information and the global reach of information through internet. There is a double flow of culture and economical innovation. We must also remember that due to the flow of this information from one part of the world which could be developed to another part which is developing has resulted a change in globalization. Globalization has come into being due to cultural transportation of information. Information has flowed from one part of one nation to another, and this has given globalization a new definition, which we know as glocalization. We will discuss about glocalization after we discuss about certain other factors of globalization. Let us now study the concept of cultural homogenization and neocolonialism. Cultural homogenization and neocolonialism has come into being due to the inherent threat of monopoly of westernized consumer culture. That means it has resulted into a new form of colonialism. Neocolonialism means new. Colonialism, of course, is the control of one party on another, to put it very simply. So westernized consumer culture, that is the presence of corporations that are basically based in America or UK, their current presence in India is referred to neocolonialism. So they are controlling the country in a newer and a more powerful way. And they have resulted into cultural homogenization. That means our different aspects of culture are being put together as one. For example, you can go to any part of India, you might not find drinking water, but you will find a little shop selling Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Right? So even a poor boy in a village can drink Pepsi, and a rich man who is sitting in McDonald's in a cafe in Mumbai can also drink Pepsi. So this is called the homogenization. Wherever you go now, you can see Domino's Pizza. Earlier, the outlets of Domino's Pizza were only at a certain places which were the most posh areas of a city. But now there is no difference. Everywhere you go, whether to the posh areas or to the lesser known areas or to the suburbs, you will find outlets of Domino's Pizza, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, KFC and McDonald's. What does this mean? It means to cultural homogenization. We are being brought into one kind of culture controlled by Western corporations, and this control is being defined as neocolonialism, a new way of colonizing other countries. Neocolonialism, as I said earlier, has resulted into decentralized and deterritorialized cultural norms. That means these companies that are coming from other countries to our countries, what they are doing is that they are spreading out their cultural nodes into the remotest parts of our country. They are linking the global, that is McDonald's, with the local, Aloo Tikki of India, right? And that is how McDonald's have come up with this Aloo Tikki burger, which is not available anywhere else, but it is available only in India. This leads us to our next concept known as glocalization. Glocalization, as the word suggests, is a hybrid of two words, global and local. Does it ring a bell? I'm sure you must be remembering the saying, think global, act local. Let us now study in details the different aspects of glocalization. Glocalization as a term was invented to emphasize the globalization of a product and is more likely to succeed when the product or service is adapted specifically to each locality or culture in which it is marketed. Glocalization comes from the word glocal. It was developed by sociologist Roland Robertson. The term glocalization arises from a Japanese term, dochakuku, which means the global localization in reference to the principle of adapting farming techniques to local conditions. So you understand the origin, it has a Japanese origin and it refers to global farming techniques in local conditions in Japan. And that's when this term developed into the wider context of our consumer culture into globalization. Why not use this in everything that we do? Global technology, but local user. Globalization is a refinement of the term globalization. The global cannot exclude the local. Glocalization is the simultaneity and the co-presence of both universalizing and particularizing tendencies, right? You've been able to connect the universal links with the particular. Something that is happening worldwide is also happening at a particular point of time in a particular locality. Say for example, Miss Universe. The Miss Universe contest is happening in America, but it is being shown all across the world. Of course, nowadays we're not that interested, but if you go right back to the days when globalization just started, that is in the late 90s, at that time it was a big event. So people, even in the remotest corners of India, they had TV and they had access to cable TV. Through cable TV, they could see this global event. So there's connection between the global and the local. Glocalization has been developed by influential thinkers like Keith Hampton, Barry Wellman, and Zygmunt Bauman. Globalization is basically understood in the context of cultural studies. It refers to the reinterpretation of global cultural products such as films, music, food, and so on by local cultures. Globalization is understood in the context of economies, and it refers to the adaptation of some particular international products to the demands of the local culture in which it is marketed. To understand the concept of globalization, let me explain you the concept of McDonaldization. McDonaldization is defined as the popular move by the McDonald's restaurant chain to customize their food products in various countries in conformation to local cuisines. George Ritzer referred McDonaldization as the spread of bureaucratic rationalization and an accompaniment of increase in efficiency and dehumanization. It refers to a form of cultural hegemony controlling the native cultural product. You must know, as the name suggests, McDonaldization. That means the company McDonald's is trying to control the food habits of many local places all around the world. The example of aloo tikki is perfect here, right? The company is McDonald's. They make burgers. They make beef burgers. But when they come to India, they understand that people are not going to consume beef here. They like vegetarian food. So they come up with the tikki burger or the paneer burger and various local variations. In a certain point of view, it might seem as a very friendly and a socialistic and a concerning move on behalf of McDonald's. Like, oh, how sweet of them. They are willing to understand our culture to sell their products. But ultimately, you must understand that this is also a form of control. You can have an aloo tikki chaat in your local bandi, isn't it? You can have a pav bhaji, you can have a vada pav, which is very similar. But now what would you do? You would refer that, no, I prefer to go to a McDonald's with your friends rather than spending your time at a local outlet. Because sitting at McDonald's gives you a certain amount of prestige, status, and recognition among your friends. So what McDonald's ultimately is doing? Neocolonialism, McDonaldization. It is controlling your life. We shall now understand the impact of globalization and glocalization. Until now, we have been discussing what these terms mean. Now we will discuss what have been their effects. Globalization and glocalization has resulted into the sharing of multiple resources among various communities belonging to different cultures. It has resulted into the rapid technological growth to ensure more secure and convenient life. Also, the dissolution of territorial boundaries, producing cultural diffusion. Because of the internet, we say that we now live in a borderless world. And also, everyone is allowed to travel in each and every place of the world. There is no one to stop you. You can get your visa, you can get your passport, and you can fly. And you can come back at your will. There are flights, there is technology which will keep you communicated to your home country. So many people, so many theorists have suggested that the time-space distanciation, that is this distance between time and space that was earlier there between countries have now dissolved. The rise of globalization has also been due to the media. Let us understand what role the media has played. Rise of media as a superpower in the age of fast information transmission is inevitable. Media is a major mover of world politics, economics, and culture. The role of media has been primary in enhancing the pace of globalization. Right? Media refers to social media, TV, print, internet, radio. So you might see all of these technologies that is used by media. The ultimate purpose is to make you familiar with what is happening in the outside world. You are a local and you are participating in the global through media. Your access to the outer world is through a television, it's through your internet. And that is how you are diffusing the borders. right? You can sit in India and you can know about what is happening in US within a second. The second factor that has resulted into the growth of globalization is popular culture. The rise of popular culture has resulted into the erasure of the gap between high and low culture. It has highlighted the importance of marketization of cultural products and public consumption. Of course, this leads us to understand globalization as a postmodern development. Globalization has enabled the reinterpretation of canonical works. Now we are talking globalization in terms of art and literature, right? Since art, technology, cultural awareness is available to everyone, we must remember that everyone is now capable of producing a work of literature or a work of art, which was considered earlier to be a product of only few people. People who are creative, people who are talented could only produce literature. But now globalization, what it has done, it has given technology, it has given a camera, it has given the internet and many other tools to many people who have talent and who are now having the confidence to produce their talent for consumers worldwide. So there are more writers, and this has resulted into the reinterpretation of canonical works of literature. These new writers and creative artists, they are reinterpreting the greatest works of literature. They are questioning the concept of high literature and low literature, high art and low art, because now globalization has democratized creativity. Everyone has the right to be creative and share their works. You can make something in your own home, you can make a video and you can share it on YouTube, and you become very popular. In fact, you can build a career on it. Earlier, the same thing was done by only certain well-renowned cooks. Say Sanjeev Kapoor, who had access to Zee TV only, and he was the only well-known cook in India. But now you can be a Sanjeev Kapoor too. So you can understand how globalization has diffused the borders created in art and literature based on the quality of literature. Therefore, we have a right now to question what was canonical or what was traditional. This right to question canonical works of literature has resulted into many other disciplines of study and creativity. For example, translation studies and the glocalization of canonical works. That means works of literature by great artists like Shakespeare, Milton. They are not just being read by people in Britain. They are being read by students in Africa, in India, in Japan. Everyone has the access to read them as well as to question them. We shall now understand that globalization has had certain negative effects. So what are the dark sides of globalization? Some of them are the rise of hegemonic universalism, the politics of polarization, the factor of rising unemployment, and the lack of individual privacy. We shall now study how globalization affects our family and personal lives. Globalization affects our relations, especially the relationships among people who immigrate to foreign lands, the newer generations. According to some theorists, it has resulted into loosening of family bonds, and relationships have been reduced to virtual relationships. That is, most of the time you meet people you love, your parents, your friends, your siblings, on your phone or on your laptop. You are Skyping or you are video calling them. They are not there physically beside you, because due to work pressures or due to many other factors, they are all scattered in different parts of the world. This has resulted into a hyperspace reality which is beyond the world of physical attachments. We shall now talk about some of the impacts of globalization. Globalization has been used as a resource for local educators. It has made education available and accommodative to students. It is working on more than one cultural level. It has resulted into multinational firms catching up the cultural habits of the local consumer. We have come to the end of the lesson. Thus, to sum up, globalization refers to a free movement of people, cultures, economies, and capital. Globalization, nowadays we know it as glocalization. It is a mixture of the global and the local. Globalization has also made borders between countries porous, and it has resulted into a homogenized culture. Also, we can understand homogenization does not mean only one culture. Let us understand homogenization as a mixed culture. Everyone around the world, we are living a mixed culture, and that is the homogeneity that has united all of us. You might refer for further reading. Please refer to the links given in the portal and the books offered as suggested reading in the website. Thank you.